Hi, my name is Matt Raney. I'm co-founder of Inverted, a platform for indie verticals for emerging creators in this new exciting market. I also have written verticals. I was the writer and co-director on Pizza Guys versus Vampires, which has won some awards for best indie vertical this year at several different shows. So that's me. So I come into this as a writer. So I actually started my writing journey as a novelist. I was a novelist, then I transitioned into TV and film. I wrote on Bull for CBS. I've written several indie film productions, an animated project that's in production, YA adaptation. I've also written full series, full cast audio drama. So I was a writer. That's how I kind of got the intro, was working with a great company called Flashback Pictures, run by Dan Catronio. That was the production company that created Pizza Guys versus Vampires. And then at the same time was working with my business partner, Jason, who comes to us from the tech world. He was on the ground floor at MySpace, and then built his own app company, City Sourced, and sold that. And he was sort of living in quasi-retirement, but he's a big cinema lover. And so I kind of roped him into this venture. And we feel that the current trends and the current content that's out there in the vertical world is just the tip of the iceberg. Obviously it's something that they've done very well and that they've found a ravenous audience. We think there are other audiences out there for other types of content, which is not to say that the current content isn't great and doesn't bring people a lot of joy, but we just think there's other audiences out there and other types of content that can win in this format. So right now, when you go to like Real Short, Drama Box, everything is kind of romance driven. It's very female gaze. Even though that they range from like comedy to sort of drama or whatever, really it's kind of all that romance sort of genre, which is great. And again has found a very hungry audience for that content. But I think our theory is that if romance does well in this format, why wouldn't anything else do well? Now, there are probably certain elements that lend itself to this format. Even just simply talking about the 9x16. If everything's going to be a close or a mid, that sort of can dictate a little bit of what kind of storytelling might do really well. But we have found already for instance, Pizza Guys versus Vampires, that you can do action very well inside a 9x16. So everyone has a phone. Every type of person is on TikTok and is watching vertical kind of content. So we think that there's an audience for all kinds of vertical narrative content, not just romance, sci-fi, horror. I don't know that the time is right for like, the Nomadland or Oppenheimer of vertical content. I do think it's all kind of fun genre, maybe even a little campy or a little silly, but I think there's all kinds of genres that can find fans, and that's really the challenge that's incumbent upon us. Is these companies have done a great job at training their fans and how this works. There's a paywall, there's a certain amount of free material. Find the ones that you like, pay to get through, watch to the end. They have fan sites. They follow the stars that are big there. So we do have our work cut out for us in that we're either going to have to introduce traditional vertical fans to other content that they will like, or introduce fans of certain kind of content to the vertical format and the way that it works. And both of those are hard, and so that's really the work that's cut out for us, coming up. As of right now, already so much seems to be changing in the marketplace, and Jason and I talk weekly about new ideas, just because, everything is shifting and evolving. So, for example, now you're seeing a lot more like AVOD kind of concepts, like ad. I think we're going to look at a hybrid kind of model, token based, with some ads to kind of bring costs down for consumers and help drive other forms of revenue. But it'd be interesting to see how ads may shape the form factor for these. Is it going to be more like network TV where you have longer chunks broken up specifically by ads? Like, will you always know, like, hey, there's going to be 7 ads throughout, this as an arbitrary number, and so people start to build cliffhangers and new scene entries, like on network television. I worked in network TV. we had our act structure. You knew where your act outs were, and you built up to the act outs, and you had your act out line, and you gave it to your number one, and then you came in, hot on another scene, at the top of the next act. So, does it start to build around the ads a little bit more? Who knows? Or does it become subscription? And at that point, if you're not building towards a paywall, how does that change the structure? But as of right now, that seems to be a very important part of the form. Is the short chapters that kind of keep the pages turning and keep the drama and intensity high. So I think as of right now, everything we're looking at has that, but it could very well evolve. No, so look, we're a very small company. We actually, when we entered this space, we felt like we would actually have kind of like a longer runway to play in it. You weren't hearing anything about people supporting. At the last vertical drama market, Dan Catronio from Flashback Pictures was there, and there was nothing. Like people were going and they were saying, "Hey, I'd like to make this, I'd like to make that," and all the people from Real Short or Drama Box were basically saying like, "Yeah, that's not really what we do," and there just wasn't anything for any of those places. And so when we started building the company, we felt like, there'd be a lot of time to just sort of be a distributor, find our footing, get different content out there. But now you're in the trades, and like every day it's like someone's launching a new vertical app. So we do feel like we need to be more nimble and move more quickly. Our revenue share model is much more generous to creators. Basically hosting it right now in terms of, although we have different revenue shares based on exclusivity and non-exclusivity. And the main reason for that is to tie up as little money as possible up front and keep as many dollars as possible for marketing. So, we do have marketing budget, we have marketing spend. We are going to market the shows that are on our platform. So unlike, say, like a TikTok or a YouTube that just sort of like throws you into the deep end, like we're going to market the shows. We're going to try and find an audience for your show, and then give a very generous revenue share on the back end. That being said, we do want to get into production and co-production as well. And so we've already pivoted to start trying to raise money for that because I think to really be competitive, we're going to need that sooner rather than later. So already our concept of what we need to do and when has evolved, and the timetable has really moved up. Currently, the cost to make these sort of projects is really low, compared to like making an indie film and trying to get it theatrically released. When Anora wins Best Picture as an indie, it makes you really excited until you realize that they filmed that cut rate at like $6 million, and then the company that helped it win the Academy Award spent an additional like $18 million in marketing and campaign to like get it to win an award. And so it's like, if that's what indie filmmaking has become, where you've got to spend $6 to $10 million to make something that can stand out in the crowd and actually draw an audience, versus in the vertical world, the potential is there to spend $100,000, $200,000, in the US, potentially even lower depending on if you film overseas. I do believe that this is going to become the place for real, and I use the word cinematic, like indie cinematic exploration. Like this is going to be the place where the indie filmmaker lives because it's inexpensive. And the audience so far has accepted the fact that, these things don't look like Marvel movies, but they're not supposed to. It's like a lot of the indie cinema that you would see from the 70s where it's like, oh man, this, not great sets, not great costumes, but the drama was there and the characters were there. And so and those things are still classics or cult classics today from that era. And so, I think for indie filmmakers, this can be a great place to try out your ideas. And then this can become like the new IP farm for like, when you find something that really works, like move it to the big screen, and give it and then it becomes actually something really different. It doesn't feel like you're doing the same thing again. Like it will look different. It will feel different on a bigger screen. And so, I think for us, we would love to, as a company, help indie filmmakers have a place to potentially, unlike say a YouTube or a TikTok currently, put their narrative content and have a chance to at least make something sustainable. I don't know if we're going to be creating a lot of millionaires or anything like that, but where they can make something for a certain budget and then earn that budget back so that they can keep doing it. And potentially, and then every once in a while have a hit, a hit that comes out that actually makes someone some great bucks and propels them to something, bigger and better. I think that would be amazing. We actually started our company as an indie film production company a couple of years ago, and raising money for indie film production was just, in this time, it's just really hard. It was hard to understand how it was going to make money on the other side. It was hard to keep the costs down. Like, it's just tough. This world is different, and it's a bit exciting, and it feels like the audience is out there. It feels like you can make some money, so, I don't think this is just a fad. I don't think it's going anywhere. I don't know exactly what it's going to evolve into, but I think for Inverted, we're along for the ride. Like, I know it's going to take time to like find these new audiences and sort of train them and start making some really great content, but I'm excited to see where it can go in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Watch Pizza Guys versus Vampires on Inverted. Check out our other shows, inverted.film. Our native apps are going to be launching in the next couple of weeks, iOS and Android.